A town is full of buildings, some tall, some short, some wide, and some narrow. The buildings are flats and houses, and factories and shops. They're built in streets. The streets have cars and buses and lorries driving along them. A river runs through the middle of the town. The river has large boats and small boats on it. There's a bridge across the river so that the cars and buses and lorries can get to the buildings on the other side. The cars and buses and the streets are full of people. In fact, there are a lot of people in a town. Do you live in a town? Mary, Mungo, and Midge live in this town. They live with Mary's mother and father in this tall block of flats. They live right at the top. There are 8 flats built on top of each other. Mary, Mungo, and Midge live in the flat with the flowers growing in the window box. There's Mary. There's Mungo. And there's Midge. Mary, Mungo, and Midge have a large sunny room to play in, a room full of games and toys and picture books. Mary's always very busy. She's always got something she wants to do. At the moment, she's seeing how high she can build her bricks. Mungo is helping her. Mungo is a wise old dog, so old and wise he can usually help Mary with whatever she's doing. Today, he's pushing the bricks over to her. He's got a very good flat nose, just made for pushing bricks. And where's Midge? There's a picture of him on the wall, but he's always very difficult to find because he's so small, and he runs from place to place very quickly. He's very inquisitive. That means he's always trying to find out things. Can you see him? I can't. He's not on the table and he's not on the chair. He's not in the toy cupboard. There he is, in that lorry. Midge is very fond of music. He's even learned to play his own tune on the flute. Listen. And now he's gone again. Mary's still building.
Please, can I have some more bricks, Mungo?
I've pushed so many my nose is sore. You want a crane, not a dog to help you.
What's a crane?
A crane is for picking up very heavy things from one place and putting them down in another. All big building sites use cranes. They're building a new block of flats over there. I've just been watching. Then there must be a crane there. So Mary and Mungo went over to the window, and the first thing they saw was a crane. I knew it, I knew it, I knew there would be a crane. Where a big building is being built, there's always a crane.
Look, there's something moving along the top.
Something moving along the boom, you mean? Cranes have booms. And now there's something going down. Oh, I wish I could get closer. All right, Midge. I'll take you down to the building site.
I'll stay here and watch. Mind you behave yourself, Midge.
Mungo and Midge like going down in the lift. They have a special way of doing it.
Goodbye, boys. Be good.
Now then, Midge, we must always remember to make sure the lift door is shut. And then Mungo had a surprise. Midge wasn't there anymore. He was in such a hurry, he wasn't going to wait for Mungo. He ran straight out to the building site. The building site was full of strange things. Machines for pushing earth away, and machines for mixing up cement and sand to make concrete. But at last, Midge found himself right underneath the crane. My goodness, it looks even bigger and taller and more enormous than I thought. Then, as Midge watched, the boom at the top started to move round. The big wooden tray hanging underneath it was full of bricks. The tray moved up and along and down onto the building so that the builders could build it even higher. Midge was very interested and very excited. Then he saw the empty tray coming back and down. And this time, Midge was so excited that he hardly noticed that the tray was coming down right on top of him. Midge knew that he must run. So he ran till he was in a safe place, and he could watch the big wooden tray coming down to the ground. Then Midge watched the builders fixing a big girder to the crane. A girder is made of steel, and it's used for making buildings stronger. And he watched another empty tray coming down. At last, a hooter hooted, and the crane stopped. The crane driver climbed out of the cabin of the crane. Midge climbed onto the top of a bucket and watched the crane driver and the other builders having a cup of tea. I thought the hooter would never go. It really has been a long morning. I could do with this cup of tea. It's thirsty work, driving a crane. Yes, and it's thirsty work tying up the loads, ready for the crane to lift them. Midge could think as fast as he could run, which was quite fast. He thought to himself, while they're having their tea, I'll pop up and have a look at the crane driver's cabin. After all, if he drives the crane from there, it must be very interesting. So Midge ran along as fast as he could and set off up the crane. It was a long way up. And it looked a very long way down. But he got there in the end. In fact, if you look carefully, you can just see him running up into the driver's cabin. And inside the cabin were switches and levers and buttons and levers and switches. The builders were too busy drinking their tea to notice Midge. They didn't notice Mungo either. All this time, Mungo had been looking for Midge. He saw the machine for pushing earth away, and he saw the machine for mixing concrete, but he couldn't see Midge anywhere, because Midge was high up in the crane driver's cabin, and Midge was very excited and very interested. Mungo sat down to get his breath back. He didn't know it, but he was sitting on the wooden tray which was fixed to the crane. And suddenly, Midge started the crane working. Poor Mungo, he got a very nasty surprise. Then Midge looked out of the window of the cabin. He saw Mungo on the tray in the air and thought, "Oh, help! I must get Mungo down to the ground before the builders think he's something to be built into the building." But the builders had seen what was happening. "Who's that working my crane?" "There's a dog going up and down on it." "I'll soon stop that." But Midge was already trying to get Mungo back to the ground again. "That's not right, Midge. Try pushing it." "Yes, that's better." At last, Midge pushed the right lever the right way, and the crane took Mungo safely down to the ground again. By this time, the crane driver was nearly back in his cabin. He didn't see Midge coming down. The workman made a fuss of Mungo. "Poor dog, you must have been frightened." But Mungo wasn't frightened anymore. He was very cross because he saw Midge running away from the crane and he thought, "It's that mouse's fault. I'll chase him home." Midge got back to the block of flats first. Mungo was close behind him. Midge ran up the stairs. Mungo took the lift. They met on the landing.
Why are you both so out of breath? And Mungo, whatever were you doing going up and down on the crane?
It was Midge's fault. Ask Midge. I wanted to find out how to make a crane work. Only I wasn't very good at making it do the right things at the right time. That's because you're only a mouse. Your head is too small to know about such things.
Now, boys.
Well, I do know what a crane does. It's got a long arm. Boom. It's got a long boom, and it picks things up and carries them across and puts them down.
Yes, a crane picks things up and puts them down. You'd better stay in your lorry for a while to keep you out of trouble.
That's a good idea, and I'll help Mary with her building. A town is full of buildings, some tall, some short, some wide, and some narrow. The buildings are flats and houses and factories and shops. They're built in streets. The streets have cars and buses and lorries driving along them. A river runs through the middle of the town. The river has large boats and small boats on it. There's a bridge across the river so that the cars and buses and lorries can get to the buildings on the other side. The cars and the buses and the streets are full of people. In fact, there are a lot of people in a town. Do you live in a town? Mary? Mungo? and Midge live in this town. They live with Mary's mother and father in this tall block of flats. They live right at the top. There are 8 flats built on top of each other. Mary, Mungo and Midge live in the flat with the flowers growing in the window box. There's Mary. There's Mungo. And there's Midge. Mary, Mungo and Midge have a large sunny room to play in. A room full of games and toys and picture books. Mary's always very busy. She's always got something to do. Today she's writing a letter to her grandmother to thank her for a birthday present. Mungo is helping her. He's a wise old dog, so old and wise that he can usually help Mary with whatever she's doing. He's holding the paper down to make it easier for Mary to write. Mary's other friend is Midge Mouse. He's usually very difficult to find because he's very small and runs very quickly. He's very inquisitive. That means he's always trying to find out things. What does he want in that toy lorry? Ah, his flute. Midge likes music. He likes it so much that he's learnt to play a flute. But he only knows one tune so far. You listen. I wish that mouse would learn another tune.
At least we know where he is. Where he was.
I wonder where he is now. Still here?
Good. Now you're here, will you help me too? Will you stick the envelope down for me? Just lick the shiny bit, and it will get sticky.
What a funny taste. I'll have to help you now. What's an envelope for, anyway?
You stuck my letter inside it. Now I'm going to write my grandmother's name and address on it, so the postman will know who to give my letter to.
Why does the postman have to give it? Why don't you give it yourself? Silly mouse. If Mary could give it, then she needn't write. She could just say thank you very much to her grandmother. But her grandmother lives such a long way away in the country that it's too far for Mary to go herself. So she's writing a letter instead. But if it's too far for Mary to go, how does it get there? Oh, don't ask so many questions.
Now for the stamp.
What's a stamp for? Oh, Midge.
Mungo, don't get cross with Midge. He's only small and quite young. A stamp is very important, Midge, because it's a way of paying the post office people, like the postman, for all the things they do, so that the letter gets to the person it's being sent to. Mungo, will you stick it on for me, please?
It's stuck on Midge. You silly mouse.
Just a moment, Midge. That's better. Now, Mungo. Thank you. The stamp has to be stuck in this corner.
I'll make sure it doesn't fall off. Now, Mungo and I will go and post it for you. The letterbox is just outside the flats where they live. But as they live in a flat right at the top of the building, they go down to the street by the lift. They have a special way of doing it.
Goodbye, boys. Don't be long.
We must remember to make sure the lift door is shut. But as usual, Midge was in too much of a hurry. He was already outside the flats, waiting at the letterbox. Oh, all right. You post the letter, Midge. It's very dark in there. Mind you don't fall in, Midge. Midge? Midge, are you all right? Midge, you silly mouse. Midge soon got over the surprise of falling in, and then he got used to the dark. He could see quite a lot of letters and postcards. Interesting place, the inside of a letterbox. I like it here. I think I'll stay here and see what happens. So Mungo sat down near the letterbox and waited as well. Midge was enjoying himself so much he didn't hear the postman arrive in his van. Mungo barked when he saw the postman clear all the letters out of the letterbox into his sack. And he barked louder when he saw Midge being cleared into the sack too. For that inquisitive mouse had decided to go with Mary's letter to see where the postman was going to take it. The postman took it to the post office. Inside the post office, Midge had another good idea. He would stay with Mary's letter to make sure it reached her grandmother. He would also find out how a letter goes all by itself on such a long journey. Midge was very interested and very excited. In fact, he was so interested and so excited that he nearly got caught in the machine that makes a mark on each stamp. That must be the postmark, so that the stamps can't be used again. All the people in the post office were much too busy to notice Midge, so that when Mary's letter was put into a hole with other letters going to the same place, Midge was able to climb in with it. All the letters in Midge's hole were collected, and Midge watched them being tied in a bundle. The bundle and Midge were put into a bag. The bag was put into a van. The van took them to a railway station. And Midge and the letters were put on a train. When the train started, it was beginning to get dark. But it was even darker inside the post bag, and very uncomfortable. At last, the bag was opened. Midge looked out. It was like the inside of the post office, except that he was still on the train. The postman reached for Mary's letter. No, Midge still hadn't been seen. The postman looked at the address on Mary's letter and put it into another hole. Midge watched it carefully. He really felt he was looking after it now. He wasn't sure how long he waited, but he knew that it was quite a long time because he was getting very tired and very hungry. Cheese! I can smell cheese! One of the postmen was eating a cheese sandwich. Some of the crumbs fell onto the floor. Oh, delicious! Oh, scrumptious! Oh, perfect! After that, Midge felt much stronger and fatter. He also felt rather sleepy. It was morning when Midge woke up. He wasn't in the train anymore. He was at a railway station in the country, in another bag, in another van. The van took him from the station to a much smaller post office in a village. Soon, another postman came and sorted out all the letters. Midge watched him. He thought the postman looked rather like Mungo. Midge was there at last. He felt very pleased and proud as he stood on the doormat with Mary's letter. Mary's grandmother thought Midge was very clever to bring the letter such a long way. She gave him a special breakfast of cheese and cake crumbs and milk. Then Midge felt rather sleepy again, and while he was asleep, Mary's grandfather made a special box for Midge to travel home in. There was sawdust on the floor and more food, and there were holes in the side so that he could breathe and see out. And there was a label that said, "Mouse, with great care." The box was put on a train, and after that, onto a lorry. The man from the lorry carried the box very carefully into the flats and knocked on Mary's door. "One mouse for delivery to Miss Mary."
Midge! Oh, Midge, you're back! Mungo, Midge is back!
Mungo pretended not to be very interested, but he had been very worried. Midge had been away for 2 whole days. "Oh, you're back. I suppose you're going to say that you took the letter to Mary's grandmother yourself." "Yes, me and several postmen."
How did you get there?
"Oh, by van and train, you know. Oh, and then I went on a bicycle." "What was the van like?" "Oh, not very interesting. I didn't bother to look." "That means you couldn't see it. You were in the postman's sack." "The train was very interesting, and postmen eat cheese sandwiches." "Is that all you can remember?" "Of course not. I'll tell you all about it." And so he did. It was a very, very long story. But you and I already know it all, don't we? A town is full of buildings, some tall, some short, some wide, and some narrow. The buildings are flats and houses and factories and shops. They're built in streets. The streets have cars and buses and lorries driving along them. A river runs through the middle of the town. The river has large boats and small boats on it. There's a bridge across the river so that the cars and buses and lorries can get to the buildings on the other side. The cars and the buses and the streets are full of people. In fact, there are a lot of people in a town. Do you live in a town? Mary, Mungo, and Midge live in this town. They live with Mary's mother and father in this tall block of flats. They live right at the top. There are 8 flats built on top of each other. Mary, Mungo, and Midge live in the flat with the flowers growing in the window box. There's Mary. There's Mungo. And there's Midge. Mary, Mungo, and Midge have a large sunny room to play in. A room full of games and toys and picture books. Mary's always got something to do. Today she's looking at one of her books. It's full of pictures of ships and boats. Mungo is very interested. There seem to be so many different sorts of boats. Mary's other friend is Midge Mouse. He's usually very difficult to find because he's so small and runs very quickly. He's inquisitive. That means he's always trying to find out things. Ah, there he is, beside Mary's toy boat. It's a yacht. Her father has promised to take them to the pond to sail it. Look, Midge has got his flute. Midge likes music. He likes it so much he's learnt to play a flute. But he only knows one tune so far. You listen. Mary and Mungo have seen a boat on the river, like the one in this picture. Do you remember seeing one like it? It's a tug. The next picture is particularly interesting and exciting. What is it going to be? It's a liner. It's so big it takes people on long journeys across the sea. It sometimes takes days and days, and the people sleep and eat on it. There are even small shops on a liner. Can we see a liner on the river? No. Our river isn't deep enough or wide enough for a liner.
But we could see a boat like this on the river, and people live on it.
What is it?
It's a houseboat. People live in it just like a house, but it's a boat, so it's called a houseboat.
I'd like to see some real boats.
Well, we've got to go along the river to get to the pond, so you will see some boats.
I must get ready. I'll take Midge down to see the boats on the river. We'll meet you by the pond, Mary. Midge hasn't learnt to swim yet, so he's got a life jacket to wear, in case he falls into the water. He also has a sailor's cap. He wears that because he likes it. Mary's taking her boat, so I'll take my flute. Mungo, what will you take? I'm taking you. That's quite enough for me to look after. As they live in a flat right at the top of the building, they go down to the street by the lift. They have a special way of doing it.
See you at the pond, boys. You know, the round pond in the park.
We must remember to make sure the lift door is shut. But as usual, Midge was in too much of a hurry. He was already running through the grass and the flowers on his way to the river. That mouse will never wait for me. Midge got to the river just as a long, narrow boat was going by. It was full of wood. There was a dog on it, too. It barked hello. Then there was a different bark from a different dog. That's a barge. It's rather like a lorry. It takes loads of things like wood and coal from one place to another. What's that? That's rather like a motor car. It's got an engine, and it takes people for rides, like a car. But it's a boat, so it's called a motorboat. What's that? That's a rowing boat. The man is pushing the boat through the water with the oars. It is hard work. I know what that is. It's a yacht, like Mary's toy boat. Mungo and Midge watched as the wind blew into the sail and pushed the yacht along. Midge wanted to sail it. Yes, he wanted to be a sailor. It's time to go and meet Mary and her yacht. But Midge had already run off to the park. He had one of his good ideas. It was a fine day, and the park was full of people enjoying the sunshine. Some of them were flying kites. There were quite a lot of toy boats on the pond, and quite a lot of people watching them. Midge was very excited and very interested. But he had to go very carefully through the grass to make sure he didn't get trodden on. At last he got to the pond and found Mary and her father getting the toy yacht ready to sail.
Oh, there you are, Midge. Will you hold on to my boat, please, while we go and get an ice cream? And mind you don't fall into the water. You can't swim yet.
Couldn't be better, thought Midge, as Mary went away, because it fitted in very well with his good idea. It was only a toy boat for Mary to play with, but it was just the right size for Midge to sail. Midge had heard of men sailing round the world on their own. He wasn't quite sure how big the world was, but he knew it was round, and this pond was round. So he would pretend it was the world and sail round it. Mary was too busy eating her ice cream to see what Midge was up to. He was still holding the string, but now he was on board the boat. Yes, he would take his flute. Sailors like to play music in their spare time. Everything aboard and shipshape. Then the wind started to blow, and the boat began to move. Mungo got to the pond just too late. Midge watched Mungo getting smaller and smaller as the boat sailed further and further away. It was very exciting to see the sail full of wind and to feel the boat moving through the water. "This is the life for me, and it's no good Mungo barking at me." Midge sailed round the pond. He was very happy. The sun was shining. The only sound he could hear was the boat going through the water and the noise of the wind through the sail. "Quack, quack, quack," said a duck as she swam past. "Quack, quack to you," said Midge, rather rudely. He felt very pleased with himself and very proud because he was sailing the boat all alone. But then suddenly he noticed that he wasn't moving any more. The wind had stopped, and so had the boat. Midge wasn't quite sure what to do now. There was no wind to blow him along. He couldn't stay forever on the pond. He'd forgotten to bring any food with him, and he couldn't swim. He tried to row himself home, but it wasn't easy without any oars. He could use his flute as an oar, but he didn't want to get his flute wet any more than he wanted to get himself wet. Then he had another idea. This one was much better. He would play his flute. He knew dogs could hear better than people. Perhaps Mungo would hear him. Midge had sailed so far away that Mungo could only just see the boat. But what was that? "That silly mouse has got stuck in the water. I suppose I'll have to rescue him. Oh, the water's cold." "Mungo, oh Mungo, oh I'm so glad to see you." "Throw me that string and I'll pull you back to shore."
Midge, you must never go out in a boat on your own, especially as you can't swim.
I wanted to go round the world. Round the pond, I mean.
You will have to find out how to sail properly first, and how to swim. Oh, I don't like cold water.
It was time to go home. Mary put Midge and his flute into her pocket to make sure neither of them got lost. Mungo shook himself dry.
Oh, what a silly mouse. He doesn't even know how big the world is.
When they got home, Mary and Mungo showed Midge a book about the world. It had pictures of all the countries and all the seas. When Midge saw how much sea there was, he thought he ought to learn to swim straight away.
That is a good idea, Midge. I love swimming.
Yes, so do I, when the water isn't so cold.